Welcome, dear listeners. I invite you to hear a tale of both suffering and triumph, of cruelty overcome by compassion and hope. This is the story of a girl who lived in the shadows of others' envy, but rose to shine brighter than the stars. It is the tale of Aschenputtel, but many of you will know it as the story of Cinderella, who found light even in the ashes. Let us walk alongside her on this journey through pain, dreams, and destiny. So settle in, relax, breathe, and I will begin. Cinderella, or Aschenputtel, a fairy tale collected and compiled by the Brothers Grimm, adapted as a story to relax to, and read by me, John Donaldson. Once upon a time, in a quiet village bordered by fields and forests, there lived a wealthy man whose life seemed full of blessings. He had a wife whom he adored and a beautiful daughter, a girl of rare kindness and grace. However, happiness can be fragile. One day his wife fell very ill. Day by day her strength declined, and soon she lay on her deathbed. The little girl knelt beside her mother, holding her hand as tears ran down her face. The woman, her voice soft and fading, told her daughter always to remain gentle and kind. She reminded her that no matter how harsh the world might be, goodness would guide and protect her. And with these final words, she passed away, leaving the girl overwhelmed by grief. For a time the house grew silent, filled with mourning. The girl visited her mother's grave every day, kneeling beside it as the seasons shifted around her. Although sorrow held her heart tightly, the girl found a sense of peace on these visits. And so life moved on, but so did the father. Believing it was time to rebuild his family, he remarried. His new wife, though outwardly dignified, was a woman driven by pride and jealousy. She brought with her her two daughters who shared her nature. They were envious by heart and cruel by instinct. From the moment they arrived, the girl's life was transformed into one of endless hardship. The new stepmother took away her fine clothes and dressed her in ragged, patched garments. The stepsisters made fun of her daily, calling her Aschenputtel or Cinderella because of the soot and ashes that clung to her from the grand fireplace where she slept. Though they enjoyed humiliating her, she endured their disrespect with quiet patience. The once grand home became a place of constant hard work. From dawn until the fall of night, Cinderella was ordered to carry water, scrub floors, and perform every tiring task her stepmother and stepsisters demanded. Her hands became rough and blistered, and she was constantly exhausted. However, through it all, she held on to the memory of her mother's words, which reminded her that kindness was her strength. Time passed, and Cinderella's life remained unchanged. One day, her father announced that he was travelling to a fair in a distant town. As he prepared to leave, he asked his stepdaughters what gifts they wished for him to bring back. They immediately demanded luxurious presents, dresses of the finest silk, necklaces covered with pearls, and jewelry for their hair. When he turned to Cinderella, she did not ask for jewels or dresses. Instead, she made a simple request. She asked her father to bring her a twig from the first tree that brushed against his hat on his journey. Her father agreed, though he did not fully understand her wish. The fair came and went, and the man returned with his daughter's gifts. He also brought Cinderella a small hazel twig that she had asked for. She accepted it with quiet gratitude, and took the twig to her mother's grave and planted it in the soft earth. With every visit, she knelt next to the growing little tree and wept, watering it with her tears. Over time, the twig grew into a strong, graceful tree. Birds came to nest in its branches, and a pair of white doves in particular seemed to watch over Cinderella. But then tragedy struck again, as the father became very sick and soon passed away, leaving Cinderella alone with her evil stepmother and her cruel stepsisters. And so life at home grew even tougher. The stepmother and stepsisters found new ways to torment Cinderella, enjoying the power they held over her. Yet Cinderella's spirit remained unbroken. The forest became her refuge, and the hazel tree her sanctuary. It was there, beneath its branches, that she dared to dream of a better life. One day, an announcement arrived that created a great excitement throughout the entire kingdom. The king had decided to hold a grand festival in honor of his son, the prince. The celebration would last 3 days, and every eligible young woman was invited to attend. The prince was seeking a bride, and the event was an opportunity for him to choose his future queen. The news caused a frenzy in Cinderella's household. Her stepsisters were totally excited with anticipation. They spent days preparing, demanding that Cinderella press their dresses, polish their shoes, and arrange their hair. They spoke endlessly of the festival, imagining themselves dazzling the prince with their beauty. Cinderella, though overloaded with their demands, could not help but feel a spark of longing. The thought of attending the festival filled her with a bittersweet hope. She dared to ask her stepmother if she might go, but the woman's response was sharp and dismissive. With a sneer, she pointed out Cinderella's ragged clothes and filthy appearance. How could someone so lowly expect to attend a royal event? Yet, when Cinderella persisted, her stepmother thought of a cruel task to humiliate her. She emptied a large dish of lentils into the ashes of the fireplace, and told Cinderella that if she could pick out every last lentil within the next 2 hours, she would be allowed to attend the festival. It seemed an impossible task, designed to crush any remaining hope. As soon as her stepmother and stepsisters left the room, Cinderella looked at the birds outside and whispered in her heart, begging for their help. In moments, the 2 white doves flew in through the window, followed by sparrows and other woodland birds. With remarkable speed they pecked through the ashes, sorting the lentils until the dish was full once more. Cinderella brought the dish to her stepmother, but the woman merely laughed cruelly. She set an even larger challenge, emptying 2 more dishes of lentils into the ashes. Once again the birds helped Cinderella, completing the task easily. But her stepmother still refused to let her go, and left for the palace with her daughters. Cinderella felt all hope leave her as she sat alone by the fireplace. But then a thought came to her. Remembering the help from the birds, and thinking of her mother's tree, she wiped away her tears and ran to her mother's grave. Underneath the hazel branches, she prayed for guidance, and the white birds responded. They dropped a shimmering dress of gold and silver into her hands, along with a pair of slippers that sparkled like starlight. With renewed hope, Cinderella dressed herself in the magnificent dress and made her way to the palace. When she entered the grand ball, the other guests gasped with admiration. The prince, struck by her beauty, approached her at once and asked for a dance. Throughout the night he did not leave her side. They moved gracefully across the marble dance floor, lost in each other's presence. As midnight approached, Cinderella's heart raced with fear. She knew she needed to leave before anyone discovered her secret. She slipped away from the prince's arms and fled through the palace gates, disappearing into the night. The next day the scene was repeated. Cinderella returned to the hazel tree next to the grave and received an even more impressive dress from the birds. Again she enchanted the prince, and again she fled at midnight. This time, however, the prince was determined not to lose her. He had the palace staircase coated in sticky black pitch, hoping to trap her. On the 3rd and final night, Cinderella wore a dress of radiant gold. She dazzled the court beyond words. But as she fled, one of her golden slippers became stuck on the pitch-covered steps. She escaped into the darkness, but left her slipper behind. The next morning the prince set out on his quest to find the woman whose foot fit the golden slipper. His proclamation echoed throughout the kingdom. He would marry only the woman who could wear that slipper, for she was the one who had captured his heart at the festival. Nobles and commoners alike buzzed with excitement, and every eligible young woman dreamed of becoming the prince's bride. The prince and his attendants arrived at Cinderella's house with the golden slipper resting carefully in his hands. His presence filled the room with an air of royal importance. The stepmother greeted him with an exaggerated smile full of false charm. She eagerly assured him that one of her daughters was surely the mysterious woman he was looking for. The eldest stepsister stepped forward confidently. She glanced at the delicate slipper with both excitement and nervousness. Yet, as she lowered her foot toward the slipper, her smile disappeared. The shoe was far too small. She tried again, pushing harder, but it wouldn't go easily past her toes. Nevertheless, she forced her foot into the slipper with great difficulty, and managed to stand, though discomfort showed in her stiff movements. Hoping the prince wouldn't notice, she gave a strained smile and declared that the shoe fit perfectly. The prince, however, observed her closely and noticed the awkward way she shifted her weight, as though standing pained her. Despite her best efforts, it was clear that something was wrong. Nevertheless, he took her hand and began to lead her toward the waiting horses. Just then, 2 white doves, perched on a hazel tree near the house, sang softly and warned the prince. He paused, sensing the truth in their warning. He turned to the girl, removed the slipper, and saw that her foot had been squeezed so tightly it was red and swollen. He gave her an angry look and declared that the shoe was not hers. The slipper was handed to the second sister, who was equally determined and confident. Yet when she tried on the slipper, it was just as ill-fitting. She pushed her foot in as far as she could, but the size of the tight shoe also caused her pain. And when she tried to walk to the waiting horses, the white doves called out their warning again. The prince frowned as he noticed how unnatural her steps were, and after inspecting the second sister's foot, announced that the shoe did not belong to her either. The prince addressed the stepmother and her daughters. His voice was cold as he declared that neither of them was the woman he was looking for. The stepmother tried to protest, insisting that no other girls lived in the household. But at that moment, a royal attendant noticed Cinderella standing quietly in the shadows. Though her clothes were ragged and her face was smudged with ash, there was something peaceful and dignified about her presence. The prince asked Cinderella if she would try on the slipper. The stepmother attempted to intervene, claiming that Cinderella was merely a servant, unworthy of such attention. But the prince silenced her objections with a look. He ordered the slipper to be brought to Cinderella. With a quiet grace, Cinderella stepped forward. When she gently slipped her foot into the golden slipper, it fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her alone. The room fell into a stunned silence. Even the stepsisters could not deny what they were seeing. The prince's eyes softened as he recognized Cinderella as the mysterious princess he had danced with on all 3 nights of the festival. The doves, now circling above them, sang a song of joy that Cinderella was indeed the right one. The prince smiled and offered Cinderella his hand, helping her to her feet. Without a word, he led her outside, where the royal carriage waited for them. The stepmother and stepsisters, realizing the enormity of their mistake, fell to their knees and begged for forgiveness. They hoped that by apologizing they might share in Cinderella's good fortune. But their appeals were only answered by the doves, who swooped down and, pecking at their eyes, blinded them as punishment for their cruelty. Humiliated and ashamed, they stumbled back into the house to live a life of disgrace. Meanwhile, the prince and Cinderella departed for the palace, where they were greeted by the king and queen with joy and celebration. At their wedding, the white doves perched above the ceremony, singing joyfully. From that day on, Cinderella and the prince lived in happiness and peace for the rest of their lives. The end. Thank you, dear listeners, for journeying with me through the story of Cinderella. May her tale remind you that kindness, though often tested, can overcome even the darkest trials.